So very detailed directions about how to construct each item, each implement. You have the ark, the Ark of the Covenant, which held the luchos, right? It held the, with the cherubs over the, you've seen that, right? You've seen the image. So those hold the tablets. And there's the table, which holds 12 showbreads. Right. There's the 7-branch menorah, the covering of the sanctuary, which had several layers of tapestries, and the walls of the tabernacle, etc. So, and then the outdoor altar. So the whole parsha is really about what Hashem wants. Hashem again starts out with asking the Jews for a voluntary offering for all the materials needed, right? And so I want to really just today talk about a general overview of the idea of the Mishkan, what it means, the symbolism of it, why we had to do it, the meaning of it to us, its purpose, and what we can learn from it. Just give you a general overview of that, just some insights that I found. And so let's start with why Hashem told us to make a Mishkan, right? So does Hashem need a Mishkan? The reason given is Hashem says, build a Mishkan so that I can live among them, in other words, so I can be present among the Jewish people. But, we learn from when we're little kids, Hashem is here, Hashem is there. Hashem doesn't have, right, he doesn't need a place. So why did he tell us to make this? So there's a couple of purposes to the Mishkan that we're told about. One is simply that it's a place in which the sacrificial duties were performed. Like, the bringing of the offerings, the lighting of the menorah, the burning of the incense. There were lots of commandments to perform, and this was just a localized location where they could be done. This could only be done in a functioning temple. But that kind of begs the question, why does Hashem need all that stuff, right? So the reason given is very interesting, is that it came about because of the sin of the golden calf. Now, so let's backtrack a little bit. The rabbis say that the
Mishkan?
Yeah, the Mishkan itself. So, or at least how we understand it now. So according to the sages, the revelation at Sinai was so awesome an event that it brought the Jewish people up to a level of Adam and Eve before the sin. That their spiritual level was so high that it was like pre-sin, like Edenic, right? And they had, at that point, there would have been no death. The world would have been a much better place had they not sinned. And in that situation, Hashem really didn't need a place to confine him, right? But with the sin, the post-sin, Adam and Eve, post-sin sort of stature resumed, right? So it returned with the golden calf. We were banished from the garden, as it were. And the Sforno says that, therefore, you had a need, after the sin, for a more tangible means of worshiping Hashem. So thus we have the Mishkan and its furniture. Nachmanides, who's Ramban, explains further that the Mishkan was originally supposed to serve as a continuation of the experience of Mount Sinai. In other words, at the Revelation, Hashem's divine presence descended on us and to dwell among us. The building of Mishkan, because of the sin, is now going to be a more permanent structure, a more permanent situation where Hashem's presence has to dwell among us because we need that spiritually uplifting experience. So it's a corrective to the sin. So it was supposed to make us holy again. It was sort of like Mishkan would be like a portable Har Sinai. We take it with us everywhere, and Hashem is always there. We remind ourselves that Hashem is always with us. So therefore, it kind of makes sense, by the way, that the first implement that Hashem tells us about is to build the ark. Why? Because the ark held the luchos. The tablets is the foundation stone, literally, the foundation of our relationship with Hashem. And so, and Hashem says he'll speak to Moshe from between the Kruvim, and his voice will emanate from there. That's the sort of reminder, don't forget what we're all about, what my relationship with you is about. And so the contributions of the precious metals that the Jews would give towards a Mishkan would also be a corrective to the contribution of this precious metal, the gold, that they gave for the sin. And this is why also there are so many specifics of instructions how to build. If you look at the Parsha, the details of Hashem gives so many details about how exactly to build it. First of all, the dimensions are down to the, to the inch, not the inch, wasn't the measurement they used, but down to the cubit, exactly, right. How many cubits, how many, each beam had to have the groove had a tongue and groove system. I mean, each tongue had to be certain. I mean, it was like very specific. And then how to build it was also very specific. So Rabbi Yochanan Zweig explains that, again, before the sin of the golden calf, the people were on a very high spiritual level. They had said Nasa v'nishma, the famous quote that they had said, meaning we will do and then we'll understand. We're going to do it blindfolded. We don't care. We accept everything Hashem is giving us. And in that circumstance, there wouldn't have been a need for such a, what he would call a manual, an instruction manual. Like it was just in us. The whole experience was in us, right? And it's funny because it's interesting. The phrase is the pasuk says, "And they shall make for me a temple, and I will dwell within them." Right. So and they shall make for me a temple, and I will dwell within them. A lot of commentaries note there's a odd. They don't agree in number. I will dwell within. It should say I will dwell within it. They will build for me a temple, and I will dwell within it, the temple, right? However, it's not agreeing in number. And so there's a lot of ways to understand that, and I'm going to point out a few. One of them is...
What's not agreeing in number?
Right, so, and they shall make me a temple, and I will dwell within the temple, which is what you think it means, right? So if you're saying I'm going to dwell within the temple, then it should say I will dwell within it.
Right.
But it says I will dwell within them.
So isn't it referring to they?
So that's the question. What is it referring to?
Okay.
And so again, keeping in line with this idea that the revelation at Sinai was something that uplifted the Jewish people. The tabernacle was meant to be inside. In other words, Hashem wanted to say, I'll dwell within them, within the Jewish people, right? So originally what this means is these commandments were sort of meant to direct a person as to how to construct their home as a sanctified space. And we do talk about the home as being a miniature temple. But because of the sin of the golden calf, right, again, we lost that connection, direct connection. So now we need an external tabernacle to recreate that connection. This rabbi, he says, Rabbi Zweig, he says it's like the analogy could be made to marital counseling. So like when you have a strong marriage, right, or it's in the early days of the marriage, right. That's actually a better. It's also analogy. When you have a strong marriage. You don't need any, you sort of intuitively know how to act with one another, how to relate to one another, how to communicate. But when something goes wrong in the marriage, God forbid, so then you need maybe some outside help. You go to a therapist, and the therapist has to say, okay, well, you need to either recreate the connection you had when you were first married. Let's say, date night, once a week or whatever it is. Right. You need the outside guidance. And so to hear this once the connection to Hashem was lost, we now needed very detailed instructions about how to reform that connection. So the Mishkan was necessary for the Jews to engage with God. Okay, now it's interesting. You can talk about a little bit more about how the building of the Mishkan and the whole methodology of it was really different. A different kind of relationship to Hashem that the Jews had until now. So Sinai was a situation where the revelation was sort of thrust on us from above, right? Hashem sort of, brought us this experience. He, the heavens opened up, and it was a, light and sound show. It was thunder and lightning. It was, everything came from on high. The heavens opened up. Hashem came down, as it were, right? And so, but the Jewish people were really very passive recipients of this experience. It was amazing, but they were passive recipients. The sanctuary, though, again, the corrective to the sin, had to be built by the people themselves, right? So they had to take the initiative from the contributions that they made to actually doing the work, collecting the materials. They had to look for some of the materials like wood, etc. So the Mishkan was a human-made thing. And so therefore it was different in that sense, that the people were now bringing God down to earth rather than Hashem being the one to initiate that relationship. So the lesson for us, I think, is that we have to appreciate, that God appreciates the self-help, do-it-yourself project, as it were. That it's not good enough to sit around waiting, in other words, for the divine inspiration. That at this point in our history, at this point in our spiritual level, we have to take that step. We have to initiate that. We have to be the ones to make the foundation and to build the building, as it were, in a metaphoric.
Did Hashem mandate the building of the Mishkan, or was?
Yes,
Okay.
He did mandate it, as Hashem says, as that's pasuk says, let them make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell with them. So yes, it was an order to do it, right? But in other words, but it wasn't the case that Hashem is saying, I'm going to build a Mishkan. It could have easily done that, right? But no, you guys have to do everything. You have to volunteer to bring materials. You have to look for the materials, like the natural things that they needed, some wool, wool and linen, things like that. They had to contribute it. Not only that, but they had to make it. They had to make it. But Salel was he was the main sort of architect, not architect, because the plan and design was Hashem's, but he was the contractor, as it were, and the builder of the Mishkan and its implements. So the Jews had to actually do it, and it took a lot of work, and there was input from everybody, and everybody helped out. That's the difference here, is that they had to take it in their own hands. They had to say, we're going to build this relationship, as it were. Rabbi Sachs expands on this idea. He says there's an interesting idea in the fact that we contributed all the materials and everything. He points out there's this a behavioral economist that did a series of experiments that he called the IKEA effect. And what he did was he got a bunch of people to make origami sculptures. And then he asked the people that constructed them what they would pay for such an object. And they said the average was about 25 cents. And then he asked a different group of people, showed them the origami and said, what would you pay for it? And they said 5 cents. So what happened was he saw that there was, 5 times the value in these objects by the people who had themselves created them. Right, and that told him that not only the objects themselves became more valuable, but that the people who made them it changed their perception of this object. Right,
It's the whole idea of like buy-in, getting people to participate, then they're bought into the process.
Exactly the case. He says also this marked a turning point in their entire relationship, because even through the Exodus, Hashem was the one initiating. Hashem sent Moshe, Hashem sent the plagues, he split the sea, he did everything for them. They were really passive, passive in the relationship. And what happened was and with the exception of the Song of the Sea, they were really kind of ungrateful about it, right? Mm-hmm. They complained. They complained about food, they complained about water, blah, blah, blah. And now Hashem is saying, okay, now you have to invest yourselves in this process, because it's going to be more valuable to you if you are creating this connection, if you're creating this building. And because they had made it, it was more valuable to them. And I think it's a lesson to us about how we get out of the religion what we put into it. It's more valuable for what we contribute. Hashem says, contribute whatever you want. Do whatever you want. It's whatever we put into it, that's what we're going to get out of it. And then you can understand more, again, the pasuk, let me build them a sanctuary that may dwell in them. Because it's them, it's the people that are establishing this connection and putting the meaning into the building. Right. The meaning comes from the people. It's a turning point in Jewish history. This was the first opportunity that they had to give something back to God, right? They were asked to do give what you want. So that's the ultimate logic of the Mishkan, is the gift of giving back to Hashem. And it's a challenge for us today because, again, we don't have any revelation. We're sort of in the same position that the Jews were in after the sin. We didn't experience the revelation. We don't have those. Sometimes we have a flash of insight or connection, but it's very rare. And I think the lesson for us is, again, that we'll get out of it what we put into it. It's really interesting. So, okay, another lesson that we learned from the building of the Mishkan. Again, it has to do with the contributions that the Jews gave. It's about how the materials themselves, and again, a lesson we can sort of carry on into our lives today. The materials themselves were, like, as I said, like a cross-section of the natural world. You have gold, silver, and brass, blue and purple and scarlet wool, linen, goat's hair, ram skins, tachash skins, which is a specific kind of animal, shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for the oil, sweet incense, the shoah, like a whole range of natural, elements, and they're very physical materials, right? Nothing spiritual about them in themselves. So, but they were going to be used and then transformed when we created the Mishkan. They were transformed into something holy, and so that's the lesson, is that we take on the divine task of taking this world, a table, a piece of wood turns into a table, and I can use it for just my material pleasures of stuffing my face, or I can use it to ennoble the Shabbos and to infuse this table with holiness, so that everything that I use in the material world becomes holy. It's an amazing idea. Okay, so, and again, we do that with everything. Food, we can stuff our faces, or we can make a bracha on it, and etc. The idea of turning the physical into spiritual comes from the word terumah itself. Terumah, we translate as an offering, but it also has more nuanced meaning, which combines the ideas of separation and uplifting. So what's being given here were just more than just gifts. Like a gift is something you give to someone because that person needs it, right? And it's usually something I don't particularly need. I'm gonna, or especially when I re-gift, it's something I got as a gift, but I don't need it, so I'll pass it on. So, but the idea here of what the Jews were giving it was something that, again, involved separating something of great value to them and uplifting it. This is another little interesting Devar Torah here, that the word terumah is a composite of the word Torah and mem. And the letter mem, which is what this refers to, the letter mem has a numerical value of 40, and Torah mem, so therefore refers to the Torah, which Moshe received after spending 40 days on Har Sinai. So again, by selflessly giving this contribution of terumah, we're also connecting to the Torah on a deeper level. So that's why that's the sort of connection of the offerings to. It wasn't just something like, okay, give me some whatever you have lying around. It's to give me something that's going to be very meaningful to you. It's also interesting to note that, as we said, the instructions for the Mishkan were very detailed, very exact, very specific, right? Everything has a way, a measurement, and everything has, an amount. And the one thing that doesn't is how much to bring. In other words, Hashem says, bring what you want. I need these items, but everybody contributes whatever they want, right? It's the one part of this all of this discussion where it's loose. It's not a set amount. It doesn't say, like, for example, we have two other examples of donations that were mandatory and specific amounts, like half shekel. Everyone once a year had to bring a half shekel. And then why the half as opposed to the whole, the commentaries go into that. But the point is, it was a very specific amount. Everyone must give. Here, there were no specific amounts. And the lesson you can learn here is that each person is different. Each neshama has its own qualities and its own gifts and its own tests and its own goals. And you can't say, I require, what Hashem is basically saying is, I'm not requiring the same exact thing from every person. Whatever your particular strengths are, it's obviously in a metaphorical way, whatever your particular gifts are, you're going to give those to me, and I'm going to value them as much as the next person's gift. So if he has, 30 ounces of gold, you have only 1 ounce of gold, I'm accepting all the donations. Right. So if this person has the ability to sit and learn Torah for 5 hours every day, and you can only manage half an hour, I accept that gift. Everyone has a different level of contribution. There's a nice little story about, it says that Rabbi Zusia, when he was an old man, he said, in the coming world, they will not ask me, why were you not Moshe Rabbeinu? They're going to ask me, why were you not Zusia? Why weren't you yourself? Meaning, the standard is not Moshe Rabbeinu for everybody. The standard is you, because I endowed you with certain gifts and certain potentials. And if you don't fulfill those potentials, it's on you. That you have to live up to that, not to the next person's, right? Okay, so then we have another way that the contributions of the Mishkan were representative of ourselves that I read. It's again the person that I'm sorry I don't have a name here, but they point out that again everything was very the minutia of building the tabernacle was very specific. And you can also ask another question: why do they have to bring specific materials? Why is it enough just to give money? Like Hashem says, everyone gives a half shekel. Why did Hashem say, bring whatever precious materials you have, right? So, a possession that we own is a very personal thing. If you think about, things that are passed down from, things that you own, that you have, were your grandparents, your grandmother's necklace or something. It's precious to you because part of that, part of the essence of the person who owned it before is sort of inherent in that item. So it's a very precious, we have the same sort of ideas about things that, things were owned by celebrities, like memorabilia, right? So we have this idea that somehow there's an essence of the person in the possession and the things that we have as well. So Hashem is saying, he's showing us that he's saying your possessions are valuable. You whatever you have that you want to give, there's something of your essence that's in that item, that's in that precious gem. It's not just money that's sort of disposable. These are things that are more representative of who you are. And that's what I want to go into the Mishkan. That's what I want. I want to see I want there to be a part of all the Jewish people in this building, And so Hashem is loving the Mishkan, and his love of it sort of explains the minutia as well. In other words, why so many details? This is an object for Hashem, as it were, that is valuable. Like, when we have an object we love, we can describe it down to, a favorite car. A man can describe down to the hubcap, what about it that he loves. A house that if we really love our house, we love, all the details of it, and we can enumerate all the details in it. So to the Mishkan, this is a building that Hashem, he rests his divine presence here. So it's showing us how much he loves this building. Again, and not so much because of the materials in it, but as for what it represents, right? It represents the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. It represents, what we put into it. It represents the Jewish people themselves. Okay.
So was it encouraged to give as much as you could?
Well, Hashem just says, let them collect a terumah for me. Just collect the voluntary donations. And it was up to the Jewish people to then donate what they wanted. I mentioned last week, I'll mention it again, I find it just so fascinating. For example, the women went and donated their copper mirrors. And this was this was going to be used for the wash basin, out of which the Kohanim would wash themselves before they conducted the services. And Moshe didn't want to accept them, the mirrors, because they were a tool of vanity. And Hashem said, in the words of the Gemara, if I'm quoting correctly, what's the word? Accept them. Because these mirrors are more valuable to me than all the other contributions. Because with the mirrors, the women would seduce their husbands in Egypt, and then they established great families, and they grew the nation of Israel. So they're very precious things. So again, the objects themselves had a holiness to Hashem because of the purpose that was done with, what was done with these items. So again, it's a more, again, it's showing that the items themselves were imbued with the personal.
Right. But also the mirrors maybe are an example of something that was really important to the women, that they valued highly, so giving it really showed
Exactly. Right. That it's themselves they were giving. Right. And that's what was so special about the Mishkan to Hashem. It's really interesting. Okay, so I want to talk about the menorah for a couple minutes. The menorah is very interesting. It brings us a very interesting lesson. And then after the menorah, I'll just talk about the parallels, what we can understand about the Mishkan itself and us today. Okay, so the creation of the menorah is interesting because it was a very complicated item. The menorah had seven branches. It was a 7-branch menorah. It was made out of one block of gold, one whole piece of gold. And it was the design was so elaborate that even after Hashem taught Moshe how it should be built, Moshe still didn't quite understand how to do it. He didn't understand it, he wasn't able to do it. So Hashem then showed Moshe an image of what it should look like. Okay, it was the image was made of fire, so Moshe could actually see what it would look like and see what the finished form should look like, and then he would imitate it. Okay, the Rashi tells us that when it came time to building it, Moshe still could not get it. He was not able to do it, and he said to Hashem, I can't do this. I don't know how to put it together. So at that point, Hashem said, okay, take the clump of gold, go to Bezalel. Bezalel is as I said, the architect. Give it to him, and Bezalel took the clump of gold, and Hashem says, throw it into the fire, and it will form it by itself. And this is how the menorah was created, basically on its own, meaning basically by Hashem's hand. So he went to Bezalel, took this, the gold, Bezalel threw it into the fire, and out came the menorah. So you have a question here. So if this was the case, why did Hashem bother to show him the image of the menorah? Why did Hashem bother to teach him how to do it? Hashem ultimately knew that it wasn't going to get done by Moshe's hands. Hashem knew he wasn't going to be able to recreate it. And so therefore, why did Hashem bother to show Moshe the image of the menorah, to teach him how to do it, to understand how it would be formed? Clearly, this is beyond human capacity. So why did he need to have an image of what it would look like? So the Sfas Emes explains that in order for Moshe to merit Hashem's miraculous assistance in actually making the menorah, he first needed to try. He had to try his utmost and demonstrate his total desire to do it. And he had frustrations in it, and he had to keep trying. So therefore, he first needed to be shown a picture how to do it, so that he could invest all his energy and desires into creating it. And he did try. And only after he had done all that he could do and wasn't able to finish the job, that Hashem come to the rescue and finish the project.
So he did his best.
Huh?
He did his best.
Exactly, and that's the lesson for us.
Yeah.
It's a balance of, it teaches us a balance of faith and action. In other words, what kind of effort do we have to have in our lives? Right? Because one of the basic facts of life is that Hashem really runs everything. Right? We know that he does. And while it seems that we're in charge of our lives, really Hashem orchestrates all of it. So the question is, what part is my part if Hashem runs everything? Right? I know when I go to the doctor, but I know that Hashem takes care of the refuah, the healing. So why should I bother going to the doctor? So in the work, The Duties of the Heart, have you ever read that book, Duties of the Heart? It's a really good book of Musar, of personal growth. It teaches us that we're obligated to act in the ways of the world, meaning we're supposed to go through the motions as if the results are dependent on our actions, while kind of having in mind that it's really not our actions that make or break everything. So we have to work for a living. We can't just sit and twiddle our thumbs. We know that, but we know that it comes from Hashem. Again, we go to the doctor, even though we know the refuah comes from Hashem. But we have to put in our effort, knowing all the while that Hashem is the one that determines the outcome. And that's the lesson of the menorah. Hashem wanted the Mishkan and the vessels to be made by man, but again, his effort was the point here was to Moshe to make his effort to do everything that he could do, and then rely on Hashem to the rest. Right. Right. Okay. So too with us, we have to be responsible. We have to do our best. We have to use our best judgment. And once we reach that point, once we do everything we do, we say, okay, Hashem, I'm throwing the gold in the fire. Now it's on you. I tried my best. Help me out. Yeah. I'm saying I can't do it all. I need the help. Right. I did everything I could. I tried to do it. I just can't do it. I'm relying on you. Yeah. So that's the lesson there. Yeah. So the Mishkan is really a metaphor for ourselves. In it's more than a metaphor. It really is supposed to be the Mishkan, right? As I mentioned. So the commandment again was that they shall make a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them. Again, the idea was that it's a personal commandment. In other words, Hashem is saying, I want to live in each person. I want to dwell within each person. So. And in addition, there's another question you could say here, because it says, according to what I will show you, after the form of the tabernacle and the form of all its vessels, so shall you do. And the Gemara explains that so shall you do means that through all the generations. That's what they say. That pasuk that says, so shall you do, means you should do this in every generation. But it's kind of, Rav Chaim Volozhin points out, how can that be? How can it be that I'm supposed to make the Mishkan in every generation? What does that mean? Every country that I live in? Where should it be? Right. Should it be just in right? And if it's not meant to be made in every generation, if it's just a one-time building, why would it imply I should make it in every generation? So again, it points the idea that Hashem wants to reside in us, that we're the Mishkan that he is wanting to live in. And the Zohar explicitly says that the Jew is compared to the temple, that just like the center of the temple is the Holy of Holies, the center of the human being is the heart, and Hashem wants to live in our heart. The mystical and Hasidic interpretation see in the Mishkan a metaphor for our relationship to Hashem. They say like this, that the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people are often described as, in terms of a bridegroom and his bride. Right? We say often that Hashem has that kind of relationship with us. So the revelation at Sinai symbolizes the wedding, as it were, right? The betrothal engagement. The marriage contract is the tablets of stone, and the biblical laws, and the commandment to construct a Mishkan is sort of the nuptial home. Okay, that the bridegroom, in which the bridegroom unites with his family, the Jewish people. So therefore, you have the elements of the Mishkan sort of paralleling what you have in the home. So for example, you have an ark, which is a closet, all right, that holds the tablets. You have a menorah, which is a candelabrum. Everyone has that in their home. You have a table for the showbread, the usual furnishings of a home. So basically the lesson is to us that our homes have to become a Mishkan, right? That's where Hashem wants to live, as it were, to exist in us. And we really do see, the Jewish people see the home as a miniature Mishkan, right? And there's a very interesting parallel to what happens in the Mishkan to what happens every Friday night at home. So, for example, first we light the candles. The mother of the family lights the Shabbos candles. That is reminiscent of the priests lighting the menorah, right? Then you have the blessing over the Kiddush wine. That was done, there were wine libations done with most of the sacrifices, okay? Then you have the challah and the challah. Then you have the blessing, the parents bless their children, which is a minhag that they do. You have the priestly benediction, where the high priest would bless those in the temple. Another example is you washing the hands. When we wash the hands before partaking of the challah, that's what the priest would do. As I said, in the washing bowl, they would wash their hands before doing the service. Another example is the salt. The salt in which we dip challah is reminiscent of the salt. It says in the Torah, it says, with all your sacrifices shall you offer salt. So salt was given with all the sacrifices because salt which is a preservative, was symbolic of the indestructibility of Hashem's relationship with the Jews. So, and then you have another one, the Zmiros that we sing on Friday night. Again, they used to sing, the Leviim, the Levites, would sing in the temple these songs. And so we really have a miniature Mishkan in our homes. And it's really supposed to be God's resting place, and we're supposed to view it that way. So
that's really interesting. I've never learned that before.
Yeah.
About like it really makes the parallels.
Yeah. All right. This was a shorter